Welcome along to the first topic of Windows Server Administration, and this topic is about server versions, installation, and Bitlocker and print services. So firstly, server versions. So Windows Server has been around since the mid-early 90s, and it's a brand name for a group of server operating systems that were released by Microsoft, and it includes all Windows operating systems that are branded Windows Server YYYY. Okay, YYYY, not being why is it called Windows Server, that's actually just short for the year. So prior to 2003, Windows Server was actually called Windows NT, which stands for New Technology. And you may also be familiar with NTFS, which actually stands for the New Technology File System. And counterintuitively, Windows 8.1 was actually Windows NT 6.3. So isn't that silly? Now, here is a collage that I made of all the different versions of Windows Server, or most of them anyway. I think I might be missing one. And we have here, the latest one, the one we're going to use in this course, taking center place, Windows Server 2019. Then the very first one down here we have is Windows for Workgroups version 3.11. And I think that came out in 1993. That was actually the first version of Windows that I used, Windows 3.11, back when I was younger. And then we had Windows NT, Windows NT 4, and then moving into the Windows Server versions here. So when I very first started working in IT, we had a big network and it was all running Windows NT 4. That was quite a long time ago now, like just after the millennium. So if that collage didn't excite you enough, here is an incredibly overpopulated slide which shows all the actual versions on the left and the year roughly they were released. Sometimes I've added the month as well. Probably need to go through and finish this off and add the month for them all. And then on the right, column 2, we could call it, we have all the different client operating system versions of Windows. So ranging from Windows 1 through 95, 98, 2000, Windows Millennium Edition, Windows Experience, Vista 7, 8, 8.1, and now we're on Windows 10. The version numbers actually indicate the year and month. So 1709 would be 2007, September. Okay, so I believe 2004 just came out, and that would be the year 2020, the month April. So that's the latest one. I think in this course we're going to use version 1909. So that's the that's the second latest one, but 2004 and 1909, there's not going to be that much difference between them. So now we're on to the long-term servicing channel. So the long-term servicing channel, LTSC, states that Windows Server operating systems that are released are supported for 10 years with 5 years mainstream support and an additional 5 years extended support. So if you think about that, that would mean that Windows Server 2008 R2 would have been supported until October 2019 because it was released in October 2009. So with 5 years mainstream support and additional 5 years extended support, the end of life of Windows Server 2008 R2 was just a few months ago. Then we have Server 2012 and 2013. They have an expected end of life 2023. Now, the two latest versions of Server, that would be Server 2016 that came out in 2016 and Server 2019 that came out in 2018, have a new kind of support mechanism, and that's called the Modern Lifestyle Policy. And the Modern Lifestyle Policy is basically a kind of way that Microsoft say that they'll support it until it's no longer needed, until it's no longer required. So they'll just keep supporting it until people get, I don't know, fed up of it, or if not fed up of it, until they've had enough. Okay, so the modern lifestyle policy has got 3 caveats to it. Customers must stay current as per servicing, customers must be licensed, and Microsoft must currently offer support for the product. So Microsoft's policy is to provide 30 days notification when customers are required to take action in order to avoid significant degradation of the product. So basically, they'll give you 30 days notice if you need to update it, is what they're saying now. So that's a little bit about the history of the versions. Let's look at Server 2019 in particular, because that's what we're going to be looking at in this course. So Server 2019 has 3 versions. There's Data Center, Standard, and Essentials. And it looks quite like Windows 10 when you first install it. So let's look at these in more detail. So what's the difference between Essentials, Standard, and Data Center? Well, first of all, the Essentials edition is only for up to 25 users, okay? And it's quite a low price. I think it's about £200, £260 or £240 or something like that. So it's not particularly expensive. The Standard edition is what we're going to use in this course. Now, the kind of caveat of the Standard edition, the catch on the Standard edition, is you can only have 2 virtual machines. So we're used to using VMware and having as many virtual machines as we want, but Microsoft don't allow that. They only allow 2 virtual machines in their Standard edition, which is actually a bit of progress from Server 2008, where in some editions they didn't allow any. So Data Center allows you unlimited virtual machines, but it's very expensive. Okay, it's could be several £1,000s. You have to look it up. Luckily, with Microsoft Azure DevTools for Teaching, we can run these well at no cost to ourselves. So let's have a look at this rather overfilled slide. Some new features of Server 2009. Probably the main new features are things like shielded VMs, Linux containers, Kubernetes as a containers technology. Windows Admin Center is like an HTML-based, browser-based kind of JavaScript configuration thing that you can use instead of Server Manager, and so, some other features to do with security. We've got improved Defender, advanced threat protection. So upgrading and downgrading, right? You can upgrade Server 2019 from Server 2012 R2 or Server 2016. So you cannot upgrade from Server 2008 to Server 2019. You must upgrade from, at minimum, Server 2012 R2, okay? All you do if you're going to upgrade is you back up your data first in case everything goes wrong. You put the CD in and you run the setup and you choose to keep settings. Simple as that. There is a possibility to downgrade from Server 2019. Now, I can't really think of any reason why you would need to do this other than you have some software that works well with Server 2016 in the office, and you think over the weekend, I know what's a great idea, I'll upgrade to Server 2019, get all the new features, and then when the staff come in on Monday, something's broken or it's not working and something isn't supported, and so you might have to downgrade. Now, I would think that what would be better to do would be to run this in a virtual machine and take a snapshot, then you could just revert the snapshot. But if you were genuinely doing a downgrade, it is possible. But the final catch to that is that you need to have downgrade rights from Microsoft. So they need to give you the right to downgrade it. And you must back up first. Okay, so I wouldn't ever recommend attempting downgrading. Right, 2 types of backup we've got here. Now, the backup feature can be installed on the Windows Server, and two types of backup to think about are a differential backup and an incremental backup. So the differential backup is faster, okay, because we have just one thing to restore, okay. The incremental backup can be a little slower to restore, okay, because we have these little bits. So those are two different types of backup. The other type of backup to think about is a full backup, and I didn't put a diagram of what a full backup is because I would think that you could probably imagine that a full backup is just backing everything up, a full backup. So that's about versions and backups and upgrades and downgrades. The next subtopic is Bitlocker. Okay, now Bitlocker, okay, is a technology for encrypting volumes. All right, encrypt volumes, Bitlocker. And when you apply Bitlocker encryption to a volume, only the authorized user can access that. So I believe I've got more information on that here. So every single version of Server 2019 supports Bitlocker, but you have to enable it first of all using Server Manager or a PowerShell command. It encrypts full volumes. We don't really need to know that it started with Windows Vista because it's available in all options now. The key is that Bitlocker allows only the authorized user. So you could add a user to the system. EFS, the encrypting file system, lets you encrypt files. Okay, so a volume is just a logical area on a disk for storage. Okay, it's a volume, it's an area on a disk. There are different terms for areas on disks: sectors, clusters, volumes, let me think, cylinders, there's all sorts. A volume just means an area on a disk for this purpose. So, right, how do we enable Bitlocker? We can either go through Server Manager, go to Bitlocker and choose enable, or we can run these commands here: enable Bitlocker, and then we can say where we want it enabled, and we can give some other flags there. So it's something that we'll do in the labs. We'll cover it. It's not particularly difficult to do. A couple of clicks on a thing. Right, print and document services. So the last little section here. When we add a feature or a facility to Windows Server, it's called a role. Okay, so you can have a server and it can act as a print server. That would be called adding the print server role to the server, giving the server that role. So we can also add on things like DHCP servers, DNS servers, file servers. So when we add on a print server role, okay, this allows us to do things with print and document services. Now, one of the features of the print server role is the print spooler. And something that can happen if you send a lot of information to the print spooler, it can fill up the disk. Okay, so sometimes it's sensible to run the print server on a computer that's not managing the domain. Okay, what do we need to know that's a print spooler? What do we need to know about print spoolers? We just need to know that the print spooler can fill up. Okay, I don't know if anyone remembers, but we used to have when you used to take a photograph, you used to take out of the camera a spool of film and you used to take it to be developed. You could think of a print spooler as something like that. So if you were working at a company that did a lot of printing, maybe a magazine company or something that made flyers, it might be possible that the print spooler could fill up. So that's just something that you need to be aware of with printing. Other uses for a print server are, if you have an office with, say, 10 people in the office and everyone wants to print, it might be quite sensible to add the printer to the print server and then share it from the print server. So then everyone would print through the server. There are kind of two different schools of thought. Another way to do it is to install the printer in its own right on the network and then connect each person individually, add the printer individually to each person. So it depends which way you want to do it, how you want to manage the network. So that really is it for the first section. I've added a little window here called All Versions of Server, and there's a website where you can download some of these old versions here. So if you're interested, I actually had Windows 3.1 running in a virtual machine. You can have Windows 95 and things from here. So if you have, I don't know, large amounts of spare time at the weekend, or if you have, you know, a lack of, if there's something missing in your life, you could maybe spend your days installing these ancient versions of Windows and using that to pass the time. I don't know what it is. So I'm going to stop the recording now for questions. Let me just go here, stop recording, and hopefully that's enough information about Chapter 1. If you go to the middle page, the information on server installation is available. Also, Lab 1 installation is available. So when you click on Lab 1, it takes you to a PDF document that explains how to install and what we need to do for Lab 1. So in this lab, you will need 3 things mainly, okay? 1, VMware, okay? If we don't have the VMware licenses sorted out, we can sort that out later on today. We'll get into the VMware portal and we'll get your key reset and all that to get you your latest VMware Pro. Okay. The next thing you need is a server ISO, which we can get from Azure. Again, if you don't know how to do that, I can show you a little bit later on today, no problem. The next thing we need is a Windows 10 client ISO, ideally version 1909, but you can use 2004. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a logbook that shows the main steps to install Server 2019 in VMware and Windows 10 in VMware, okay? Now, there are quite strict password requirements on Windows Server 2019. It will ask you to put a very long password in. So what I advise you do, because this is a testing environment, we're not testing security here, we're testing setting up operating systems, I would advise you to use this password. $, either side, $, Edinburgh College with a capital E at the end. That meets all the requirements of Microsoft's passwords. And if you use that, then you forget your password during the week. You can come back to this document and it'll tell you what it is there. So in the first stage, all we need to do is create a logbook showing the main steps, installing Windows Server 2019 and installing Windows 10. Once we've done that, all we're going to do is we're going to set both IP addresses to bridged mode. So when you install them, just leave them on NAT, okay? Once you've finished installing, set them both to bridged mode, okay? And then run a ping from the server to the client operating system. Now, the reason you go from server to client is because by default, the server will block pings, okay? The server won't allow you to ping it, it won't reply. In the client machine, if we disable the Windows Defender firewall, it will allow us to do a ping. So I've already started, because it takes a bit of time, I've already started installing Windows 10 this morning. So here I am going through what's called the just the setup questions. Now, just accept defaults until you get to this point. I'd like you to choose offline account. And what this does is this means you don't have to sign in with an Office 365 email. So we choose offline account, then just choose limited experience. And who's going to use this PC? Now, I'm just going to go for default user. I think it lets me do this. Yeah, and then for the password, I'm going to use that password that I said again. So Edinburgh College with a capital E at the end. And I'll show you what it looks like. $Edinburgh College with the capital E at the end, okay? And then we have to type it in again, of course. Getting quite good at typing that in because I've done it so many times. Now, here's another technique that I use just purely for setting up these VMs. What I normally do is I choose the first security question and I just put Edinburgh, okay? Next. So choose the second security question and just put Edinburgh. And this means as well, if you lock yourself out of the machine, you don't have to remember what your like childhood nickname was or something, right? Edinburgh, okay? We're just setting these up for testing. So it's good to be able to get into them if you lock yourself out. Right. Now, I believe this next bit is called the out-of-box experience. Do more with devices, no. Okay. Help with digital assistant, decline. Use online speech recognition, no. Do you want to use your location? No. Find my device, no. Basic for diagnostic data. Improve inking and typing, no. Get tailored experience, no. Let apps use your advertising ID, no. So it does ask you a lot of very annoying questions. Now, I think actually this is called the out-of-box experience. So it says all these, like, it says, hi, we're getting everything ready for you. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to leave that running in the background and I'm going to show you although it sounds a little bit silly, I'm going to show you the earlier stage of what you do. So for both server and client, here's what I would recommend doing, okay? What you want to do is you want to create a custom VM. Now, leave it on workstation 15. What you need to choose here is I will install the operating system later. Okay, don't choose the ISO straight away because it puts you into this thing called the easy setup and it basically answers all the questions for you and it won't allow you to set it up in the way that you want to set it up. So let's just do I will install the operating system later, right? Choose Windows. Now for server 2019 doesn't have its own menu option. It might do if you've got a newer version of VM Workstation Pro than me, but just choose server 2016. They're effectively the same thing, okay? Then what would be sensible to do is to make a directory. So I've made a directory called VMs for 2020 classes, and I've made two subdirectories in there, one for Windows Server Admin and one for managing a web server. And in here, I've put inside there, I've got the two ISOs and I've put all the stuff from these machines in there. So I would make a folder to keep this tidy and put everything in there. Okay, so we're going to say we're going to store it. I'll just store it outside here. There we go. Okay, so give it a sensible name. So we change it to server 2019. Click next. Now, firmware type, choose BIOS. The universal extensible firmware interface can cause some problems later on. Just choose BIOS, it's more simple. Now, number of processors, this is up to you, depending on how good / bad your machine is. I just leave it on 2 processors, 1 core, and it runs absolutely fine. The RAM, now, depending on how much RAM you've got, 2 gig is absolutely fine. It will work with the lowest that I know that it works without being trouble is that 1820. Okay, it can work with that. What I normally do though is put it on 4 gig if you've got the RAM spare. Put it on 4 gig just for the installation. Makes the installation go a lot quicker. Once the installation's finished, we can turn it down. Leave it on NAT. Leave this as default. Leave this as default. And another top tip, when you create the disk, make sure you put the disk as a single file. That way, it's easier to delete it. If you have all these little files, it can be quite annoying. The reason you use multiple files is if you want to put it on a USB stick and move it, because FAT32 doesn't let you store files bigger than 4 gigs. So just store it as a single file. And then make sure you put it in your organized folder. You know, don't save it on your desktop in your pictures directory and call it untitled1 or something like that. Give it a sensible name. Right, customize hardware. This is just my personal preference. I usually remove the sound card and remove the printer because we're not going to use them anyway. And then click finish. Now, I think I've already got a machine called Windows Server 2019, so that's going to cause me problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this Windows Server 2019 _2 because I set one of these up earlier this morning because I knew I didn't want you to have to sit and watch the installation because it's very boring. So let's do _2 there. All right, and all the way to the end and finish. Now, what we can do now is we can edit the virtual machine settings and we can go to the CD drive, choose use ISO image, browse, and then we can choose the Server 2019 ISO, okay? And then all we do is we click start and we get into the installation. Now, here is my completed, okay, I'm gonna make this a bit bigger. Okay, don't scale then. Here's my completed Windows 10 installation, all right? Let me just close Internet Explorer or Edge. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna power this off. And what this means is that I have, and I'll just close that version 2, that was just a demonstration.
Michael, a quick question. Is it possible to use virtual Windows from the last semester, or?
You've muted yourself, Michael.
Michael, you muted.
Oh, sorry, I muted myself. Sorry. Yeah, you can use your ISOs from last semester, but you're going to need, I mean, I would do it again, personally, because you need to make a logbook showing that you know how to install Windows Server on Windows 10. So unless you can come up with a way of using, I mean, if you've got, so suppose if you've got documentation from last term, then you could use that. Let me just get on with this next bit and then I'll do questions, okay? So at the moment, I now have 2 virtual machines, each with 4 gig of RAM. Now, if your machine only has 8 gig of RAM and you start these, your machine is going to crash. So another thing to bear in mind is don't try and install them both at the same time because it just slows you unless you've got a very good computer, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to edit the settings of this virtual machine and I'm going to turn this down to 2 gig, okay? Because the installation is now complete. And that means that when I run them both at the same time, they're only going to use 4 gig of RAM, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start Windows Server, okay, Windows Server 2019. And I'm going to start the client and I'm going to pause the recording now. Pause recording. So just make sure when you install Server 2019 that you install the standard edition with the desktop experience. If you install it without the desktop experience, all you'll have at the end is a command line. Okay, you'll start it up and all you'll have is a command prompt. You'll not have any nice pictures of beaches or deserts or anything like that. So the next point is, how do we get Control-Alt-Delete into there? Well, hopefully you've done this before. You just go VM, send Control-Alt-Delete, VM, send Control-Alt-Delete. Now, here we are ready to log in as administrator and default user. So because we've used my sensible password, we should be able to get in there and let's do $, capital E. All right. Now, the last part of Lab 1 is showing that we have connectivity between these two machines, okay? So at the moment, when we installed them, we put the network adapter onto NAT, okay? And if the network adapter's on network address translation, the machines will not be able to talk to each other. They'll be able to get onto the internet, but they will not be able to communicate. So this last bit of setting, what we're going to do is we're going to give the machines static IP addresses. And in the lab, there's a table just to fill out what IP addresses you've given each of the machines. So hopefully these will load up. Just ignore any like nonsense errors. What's this? Do you want to continue running scripts? No. Okay. I didn't realize I was running scripts. Right. Let's go VM and let's go to settings, and then let's go to the network adapter. Now, at the moment it's on NAT. That's because we use NAT for the installation. Let's fire it onto bridged, okay, and hit save. Now, let's open up the command prompt and let's have a look at what IP address we have. So let's do IP config. Aha, what's this? Something just came up about, see, I mean, how, like, if I wasn't quick enough, then I don't get to ever click that. Is that what's happening? IP config. And now what's happened? I mean, okay. Right, so this is what we want, 192.168.100.2. That's from the bridged adapter, okay? So let's jump over to Windows Server 2019, okay? And let's see if we can get ourselves an IP. So at the moment, this is on NAT, so we're gonna have a strange IP address. Let's just do CMD IP config. All right, so we got 192.168.158. That's just VMware's internal addressing. So at the moment, we can put this onto the bridged network like we did with Windows Server 2019, like we did with Windows 10, sorry. Or we can create an internal network between these two. And the way that I'm going to do that is let's go to settings. No, let's go to the virtual network editor, wherever it is, somewhere. Here it is. Okay. So hopefully you can see this bit when it eventually loads up, if indeed it eventually ever loads. Oh, dear, dear. Right, I'm going to pause this recording because it's VMware's been troublesome. So we want the two machines to be able to communicate. Okay, we know I've just tested bridged networking. That's working fine. But we want to create a LAN segment between these two machines. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to change the network adapter to LAN segment. Now, you will need to add a LAN segment. Okay, you just click add and then click close. And then your drop-down menu, you choose, you can have multiple LAN segments. We'll probably only need one. So let's put the server onto LAN segment 1. Okay, and let's just do IP config now. You'll see there's no IP because we're going to have to assign it. Let's jump over to the client machine. I'll make this a bit bigger. And let's put the client machine onto LAN segment 1. And then let's check our, so CLS for clear the screen. Let's just check our, we've got nothing. Okay, so right click here, network and internet settings. And then we want to go to the network and sharing center. And then we want to go to change adapter settings. And then we want to go to properties. And then we want to go to IPv4. And then we want to use the following IP address. And we're going to make the address of the server 10. Oh, numlock's not on. 10, 10, 10, 1. Okay. Make sure you put it onto a /24. And the default gateway, we can leave blank. Okay. There is no default gateway. This is going to be the default gateway. And let's just hit OK. Close. Right. Now let's just check that we've got Okay, great. 10, 10, 10, 1. Brilliant. Now let's go to our client machine and follow through the same procedure, network and internet settings, and then network and sharing center, and then change adapter settings, and then Ethernet, and then IPv4, and then properties, and use the following address. Let's go 10, num locks off on this machine, 10, 10, 10, 2. Okay, and let's make sure it's on a /24, 255, 255. Default gateway, we're going to make it the address of the server. And the preferred DNS server, we're going to make the address of the server. And let's hit OK. Now these don't apply till you click close, interestingly. Do you want to join network 3? Yes, I do. I want to be discoverable as well. And let's just press up here. Great. We've got 10, 10, 10, 2 on there, right? So let's do, the final thing would be to jump back to the server and let's ping 10, 10, 10, 2. Okay. It's not going to work because the Windows Defender firewall is blocking this. Okay, so the last part to do in this lab is to show that we can make these work. So if we do ping with a /t in Windows, it'll keep trying. You can think of that as ping and try and keep trying. Otherwise, it just does 4 and then it stops. So let's leave that running over here. And we want to type Windows Defender Defender Firewall. Now, the Windows Defender Firewall is the one we want. We do not want Windows Defender Firewall with advanced security. So let's just open the Windows Defender Firewall. Let's go turn Windows Defender Firewall on or off. Let's go turn Windows Defender Firewall off. Not recommended. Let's hit OK. And if I am, in fact, as confident as I often am, when I click this button, these pings are going to be working. I almost bet you that they're going to be working. Let's just click here. Oh, yes. There we are. And so if you just show some screenshots to show that you've got this to work, that should be it. I'm going to stop the recording now for questions, and we can stop this. But what we've shown now is that we have a client-server network. We have a server and a client that can talk to each other. And we're ready to move on to lab 2 in week 2 once we've got this all nicely set up.